Welcome back as we continue our journey through the myths and legends that shaped our world. Today we climb the slopes of Mount Parnassus to a stone sanctuary where the ancient world came with questions and left with riddles. High above a valley of silver olive trees sat a woman on a tripod whose words could sway kings. She was the Pythia, the Oracle of Delphi, priestess of Apollo, keeper of a voice that could bless a war or unmake a crown. Who was she? How did she speak? And why did so many trust her? Let us step inside the temple and listen. In Greece, divination was not a fringe curiosity, but a habit of life. Omens were everywhere. The arc of a hawk over the road, the way a flame spat sparks, ripples that danced across a bowl of water. Priests and seers advised on marriages, voyages, harvests, and treaties. Yet, above all other readers of fate stood the oracle, not a mere interpreter of signs, but a mouth through which a god was believed to speak. No oracle was more famous than the Pythia of Delphi, high priestess of Apollo, whose temple stood where Greeks believed the earth itself had a heart. Myth gave Delphi its map. Zeus, seeking the world's center, loosed two eagles from opposite horizons. Where their flight crossed, he cast down the omphalos, the navel stone, polished smooth by centuries of hands and kept within Apollo's sanctuary. Another myth told how the place became Apollo's. A monstrous serpent, Python, haunted the valley, choking it with foul miasma. Apollo loosed his arrows, slew the beast, and claimed the site. From that victory, the oracle took her name, Pythia, and the smoke of sacrifice has curled above the valley ever since. Who then were the women who bore this title? The Pythia did not need noble blood. She came from the families of Delphi and gave her life to the god. In early times, the office was held by a maiden, but a scandal changed the rule. Later, Pythias were older women, sometimes widowed, sworn to chastity. On ordinary days, they were mortal, managing temple routines and learning the traditions of the shrine. Names rarely survive, but one of Delphi's best witnesses is Plutarch, the historian who served there as a priest in the 1st century, and left us details of practice and ceremony. The calendar of prophecy was strict. The Pythia spoke on the 7th day of certain months, 9 days in all each year, never in winter, when Apollo was believed to wander far from Greece. Even then, there was no guarantee. Before dawn, the priest performed a test. Cold water sprinkled upon a goat. If the animal shivered violently, it meant the god would speak. If not, the doors stayed closed. Pilgrims could only wait or turn back down the mountain with their questions burning in their pockets. On days when Apollo consented, ritual prepared both priestess and petitioner. The Pythia bathed in the Castalian spring, icy water drawn through a lion-mouthed spout, and her attendants burned laurel leaves whose smoke threaded the air. Supplicants washed as well and purchased a pelanos, a sacred cake, to sacrifice before they approached. They queued by privilege, Delphians first, then the city-states of the Amphictyonic League who guarded Delphi's independence, then other Greeks, and last of all, non-Greeks. Those admitted fell into two broad groups. Most were private individuals asking about crops, marriage, voyages, or lawsuits. Others were official envoys sent by a city-state or a king. For them, the stakes were higher and the gifts richer. Gold bowls, bronze statues, whole treasuries of spoils. Women, apart from the priestesses, were not allowed into the adyton, the inner room. Questions from female petitioners were carried by a male guardian or a priest. What happened inside that room is the heart of the mystery. Ancient writers said fumes rose from a crack in the rock beneath the temple. Inhaling them, the Pythia slipped into a trance. Her body tensed, her voice changed. Words tumbled out in fragments, shouts, sometimes song. Priests stood nearby, shaping her utterances into hexameter verse, the language of epic, so the answer could be recorded and remembered. When 19th century excavators failed to find a cavern, scholars scoffed, proposing laurel chewing or theatrics. Modern geology pushed back. Delphi lies where two fault lines meet, and samples from the bedrock show traces of light hydrocarbons, such as methane and ethylene. Ethylene at low concentration produces euphoria and dreamlike states. At higher levels, it can cause unconsciousness. The temple's location, combined with incense and lamps in a closed room, could have created an atmosphere that altered breath and mind. The ancients may not have known the chemistry, but they understood the effect, a mortal voice that seemed larger than itself. What kind of answers did the Pythia give? Rarely the yes or no a petitioner wanted. Her replies swam in ambiguity, not lies, but riddles that forced a listener to think. The most famous example is King Croesus of Lydia. On the eve of invading Persia, he asked whether he would succeed. "If you cross the river," the oracle answered, "a great empire will fall." He crossed, certain of victory. The empire that fell was his own. The power of such replies was not in prediction, but in pressure. They made a leader confront his assumptions and choose a course with eyes open. Other consultations became strands in the tapestry of Greek history. Colonists bound for North Africa were told to found the city of Cyrene, where a certain river met the sea, and a Greek harbor rose on the Libyan coast. When Themistocles faced the approach of Xerxes' immense Persian army, Delphi spoke of wooden walls that would save Athens. Many Athenians took this to mean the old palisades. Themistocles argued the phrase meant ships. He evacuated the city and drew the enemy into the narrows at Salamis, where oars and rams, those wooden walls, shattered the invaders' fleet. Even legend's greatest figures sought the shrine. One tale says Alexander the Great arrived on an inauspicious day. The priestess refused to seat herself upon the tripod. Impatient, Alexander seized her arm and drew her toward the Adyton. Startled, she cried, "You are invincible!" He released her, saying he needed no other prophecy. True or embroidered, the story shows how the Greeks imagined the oracle's authority. A reluctant voice, not to be bullied, yet dangerous when it broke loose. The Pythia did not only steer wars. Farmers asked about rains. Lovers asked about marriage. Supplicants asked how to cleanse blood guilt after a crime. Merchants wondered which harbor to trust, generals which ally to court, and lawgivers whether a reform would anger the gods. In real life, the answers were often short, a single phrase, a metaphor, but cities carved them in stone and built policy around them. Delphi rarely dictated, it indicated. Heraclitus put it cleanly: the oracle neither conceals nor reveals, but indicates. That was the shrine's genius. By speaking in images, it made people argue and think before they acted. Because the answers were multivalent, Delphi endured. If the Pythia had given crisp predictions every time, statistics alone would have ruined her. Instead, ambiguity protected the shrine. When a prophecy seemed fulfilled, cities paraded the story as a proof of Apollo's favor. When events went badly, leaders blamed their own misunderstanding. The sanctuary itself broadcast prestige. Along the sacred way stood treasuries where city-states displayed spoils from wars and dedications from victories at sea. Every gift was a billboard. We asked, we prospered, the god approved. Delphi's fame also fed the Pythian Games, a festival of music and athletics held in Apollo's honor, drawing crowds who carried home stories of the shrine's power. What did Delphi look and feel like to a traveler? Imagine climbing a paved path that zigzags up the slope. On either side stand small marble houses, treasuries, crammed with statues and gold bowls. Bronze tripods gleam in the sun. Inscriptions brag of battles won. The omphalos sits like a white hart, roped off and reverent. The smell of laurel and goat fat mingles with mountain air. Above, the Doric temple flashes pale against the cliff. Inside, the floor is cool, sandals whisper, smoke pools in the rafters. Even cynics felt the set of the place, a geography designed to make doubt hesitate. Delphi had rivals, and comparison clarifies its character. At Dodona, Zeus spoke through the rustle of oak leaves and the clank of bronze cauldrons. At the oasis of Siwa in Egypt, a desert oracle told Alexander he was divine. Those shrines were potent, But Delphi combined prophecy with pan-Hellenic politics, and a scenic drama few places could match. It was both a mountain theater and a clearinghouse of decisions. That combination, sacred spectacle plus civic utility, explains its longevity better than any single miracle. Yet the oracle's power was not absolute. Playwrights mocked her, philosophers doubted, and sometimes politics simply ignored what she said. During the Sacred Wars, rival Greek states fought over control of the sanctuary itself. Later, under Roman rule, emperors paid respect, but relied more on their own augurs and on imperial logic. As new faiths rose, the old shrines thinned. By the 4th century of our era, Christian emperors closed pagan temples. Theodosius I finally silenced the Adyton. The tripod went cold. The sacred way grew quiet except for tourists and goats. So was the Pythia a fraud, a holy woman, or a phenomenon of geology? Perhaps she was all of these at once. People brought her their fear and hope. The temple gave them ritual and awe. The earth added its breath. Together, these made a space where decisions crystallized. A king left, with courage or caution burning in his chest. A farmer left, with a plan to plant early or late. The oracle did not force the future, humans did. But she nudged the hand that wrote it. Delphi's afterlife is long. The very word Delphic still means enigmatic. Historians pore over inscriptions and dedications to map who consulted and why. Travelers still walk the sacred way and stand where the temple stood, looking down at shimmering olive leaves and the river of light in the valley, trying to hear an echo of a voice that once filled the room. Even now, we are tempted by the same thing that drew the ancients. The hope that somewhere there is a place where uncertainty thins, where a single sentence can make a path appear. And that is the enduring magic of the Oracle of Delphi. She sat between clarity and chaos, between politics and prayer, and made questions sharper than answers. Whether her power came from a god, from the earth, or from the human mind's need to believe, she shaped the judgments of 1,000 years. Our journey pauses here, but her riddle remains. If you could step into that temple, feel the cool of the stone under your hands, and ask the Pythia one question, what would it be? Choose carefully. The oracle will not conceal or reveal. She will only point the way.